Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, a conversation with the chair of the Federation of State Beef Councils. Don Caldwell from Nebraska will stop by. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission and Kansas Department of Agriculture, and our weekly updates from the Kansas Livestock Association and Paragon Ag Advisors. The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919, kfb.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leading in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online, kswheat.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future of Kansas corn. Online, kscorn.com. In agriculture news from agview.net, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association has now gone public with its new list of policy priorities for the year ahead. It includes some familiar issues and new priorities as well. The NCBA policy book will focus on four main areas. The first, fake meat. Last year, NCBA was successful in arguing that USDA should have jurisdiction over lab-produced and plant-based meats. This year, they'll work to ensure that the proper regulatory framework is in place to protect the health of consumers and prevent deceptive marketing, along with ensuring a level playing field for traditional beef. The second priority, trade and market access. Among the biggest priorities for NCBA, the organization wants a bilateral trade deal with Japan, as well as rapid congressional passage of the USMCA agreement. The third priority, dietary guidelines. That's something the government updates every 5 years and will do so again in 2019. NCBA wants accurate information in place about the nutritional advantages of beef. The fourth priority, regulatory reform and implementation. Now, this includes full implementation of the new Farm Bill, as well as getting a permanent solution in place for the overly restrictive hours of service rule for livestock haulers, and a new water rule to replace the 2015 WOTUS rule. Well, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer sent Congress a list of legislative changes necessary to implement that new U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. These to-dos are decisive steps in the approval process for replacing NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The list requires some legal changes that exclude Canada and Mexico from some global safeguard tariffs as arranged under the USMCA. And Vice President of Communications for the Kansas Livestock Association, Todd Domer, can now add Hall of Famer to his resume. Recently, the Livestock Publication Council honored the longtime communicator with their Hall of Fame award. A consummate professional and strong advocate for not only the livestock industry, but all of agriculture. We extend our congratulations to Todd Domer on his induction. Stay with us. You're watching the Kansas Ag Report. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web, oldeseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. Grassandgrain.com. And Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. More at ksgrainsorghum.org. Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net. We're joined now by Don Caldwell, who is a cattle producer from Edgar, Nebraska, and also is the current chairman of the Federation of State Beef Councils. And so, Don, always great to see you.
Well, good to see you.
And boy, you have been busy as just spouting off everything about what's going good with the beef industry, especially representing with all those state beef councils.
Yeah, definitely. So beef demand is at an all-time high, both domestically and globally. So we know that our work has been effective. And that's most important, be able to give that good news back to the producers that pay in. And we have some pretty cool new projects going too.
Well, there is. And now before we get to those, we got to talk about what has probably has been in the news recently with the lawsuits being filed and a lot of confusion about what's going on. What could you tell us as far as that goes when it comes to some of the outside other groups that are wanting to challenge the beef checkoff?
Sure. Well, we do know that the lawsuit was allowed to be expanded to include 13 more states, and Nebraska, where I'm from, is one of those states. But what we also know is that the injunction was not placed on those states, as of yet anyway, and so that's an important piece of it.
So with that, we'll just kind of wait and play to see what happens as far as if things will have to stop for a while until things get sorted out. Is that what you know?
Yeah, so for instance, and I'll just use Montana for an example, they now have to sign affidavits, producers do, if they want Montana beef council members who are their neighbors, friends, fellow beef producers in their state to have purview over their state 50 cents. Otherwise, their state 50 cents just sits in an account waiting for this to all be done. Okay. And so when you think about things that state beef councils do, there's university research funded in local states. There are state promotion efforts such as Best Burger Contest and beef fun runs. There are dietitian immersion experiences, all of these different things that are conducted on behalf of producers at the state level. And those are the kinds of things that we don't want to lose because they are so effective in marketing our product.
Right. Talk about those state beef councils, because what they are, they're elected by producers, and there's a volunteer position.
Right. We are volunteer, 100% volunteer. So it's on our time when we represent. We just want the best for the beef industry as a whole, and it is the entire beef value chain. So it's from conception to consumption, anything that affects an eating experience, and it should help people have confidence that it is their fellow producers, and they quite honestly could try to get on their state board as well and be involved in the decision-making process for how those dollars get allocated.
Okay, let's go back now. We talked about that. Let's go back. You said there's some new and exciting things coming down the pike. Yeah. What about those?
Well, one of my favorite new and exciting things is chuck. So, you might think chuck is a roast, right, when you think about the beef carcass, but chuck is going to become our new best friend in purchasing and cooking beef. So young people in particular, and I want to think I'm still in that category, but not as much anymore. Yep. Smart speakers. So if you have a smart speaker, an Alexa, whatever your platform is, you can ask to open Chuck and to say, hey, Chuck, how do I fix a pot roast? And Chuck will give you all kinds of recipes, which cuts of meat to buy that work best, all this good information. Chuck has a pretty fun personality too, though, because if you say, Chuck, I would like a vegetarian recipe, he will tell you, you should probably ask the cows. They're the only ones I know that eat all vegetables.
Ah, well, good. That's great. Don Caldwell, who is the chair of the Federation of State Beef Councils, is joining us. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. And AgView.net, covering news and views in the Beef Belt and Western Corn Belt. Reliable and relevant, AgView.net.
Imagine having someone help you pick the best corn hybrids for every field on your farm. Your Oldie representative can combine your data with his data to offer a field-by-field prescription. Contact Oldie Seed today at 877-692-4555.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News. A reliable and relevant source, AgView.net. We're talking with Don Caldwell, a Nebraska cattle producer and the current chairman of the Federation of State Beef Councils. And we talked about this, kind of finding that next generation, the millennials, those that use some of the new technology. What a great concept to do that, because the days of maybe getting grandma's recipe box handed down maybe isn't there anymore, and so people want to try something different, but they need a reliable source to get that information.
Yep, absolutely. And so Chuck, and you can look it up on your laptop. If you're me and don't want to have a smarter speaker, you can just go to chuckknowsbeef.com. And the more questions that are asked of Chuck, the smarter he gets. So we want producers right now, while we're soft launching it, to try to trick Chuck and ask all kinds of questions, because we want him to get smarter and smarter. So in February, when we officially roll Chuck out to all consumers, then he will be as smart as possible to give them the best answers for all of their beef questions.
Sure. What else? What else you got going on?
Oh gosh, the Mediterranean diet, it's really good with beef included. And so we got that validation just recently that nutrition-wise, if you're eating a Mediterranean diet for health reasons, you get to include beef, which tastes really, really good as part of it. So that is good news. In addition, just to be more efficient with our advertising and outreach dollars, we have always broken consumers down into those who will never eat beef no matter what, those who always eat beef no matter what, and then there's that movable middle that we never quite know about. We are getting much more tactical with that, and so we're going to have certain kinds of foodies, certain kinds of parents, people who go out a lot, people who stay in a lot, people who want to spend more, people who want to spend less. Wow. And we're going to become very strategic in how we message and market to very specific consumer groups, being much more efficient with each producer's dollar, again, which is a good thing.
I know one of the things I think was also a good idea, the Kansas Beef Council, where we're from, brought some producers in to talk with influencers like dietitians and those food people. I mean, what a great opportunity to make that connection.
Yes, when we can visit with dietitian, with people throughout the value chain. So for instance, who is purchasing the ingredients for large restaurant groups? When we can bring those folks in, bloggers, we get to, and when they get to visit with that rancher or feed yard owner one-on-one, their perceptions come alive. They love us, and it's a good thing. They appreciate what we do. We work hard. Work isn't nearly as hard as it was when my grandparents were raising cattle, but it's still greatly appreciated that we're bringing a good product to them to market to other people. So those are good investments from each state beef council's work.
The website they can get a lot of this information from?
beefitswhatsfordinner.com.
All right, Don, good to see you. Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thanks for your service to the
Thank
industry.
you.
Don Caldwell from Edgar, Nebraska is chairman of the Federation of State Beef Council. Joined us here on the Kansas Ag Report.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, But how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source. AgView.net.
The Kansas Soybean Commission will conduct a regular meeting March 15 in Topeka. During it, the commissioners will determine their preferred and alternate nominees to the United Soybean Board. Any qualified soybean farmer can apply for consideration through February 28. To qualify, an applicant must be a U.S. farmer who grows soybeans and who owns or shares the risk of loss of such soybeans. As interested individuals are identified, the Commission, to the best of its ability, will ensure the eventual nominees reflect the diversity of those its programs serve. That is, in terms of farm size, experience, production methods, marketing strategies, and other attributes. The Commission will submit candidates' names to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in May. The Soybean Promotion, Research, and Consumer Information Act authorized the National Board, and the Secretary of Agriculture selects appointees from the soybean farmers that qualified state soybean boards nominate. The eventual appointee will serve a 3-year term beginning in December. Volunteer USB members attend 3 board meetings each year. They participate in conference calls between those meetings, and they represent their industry to others. The Soybean Checkoff reimburses them for the travel and other expenses related to their service. More information, the application, and diversity outreach plan are available at kansassoybeans.org/forms on the web or by calling the Kansas Soybean office at 877-KS-SOYBEAN.
Animal agriculture is a significant part of the Kansas economy, so animal health is of critical importance not only to the agriculture industry, but to the whole state. This spring, the Kansas Department of Agriculture is traveling the state to share information about animal disease preparedness. On March 20th, KDA is sponsoring a livestock mortality workshop in Garden City for cattle, swine, and dairy owners to learn about options for managing large-scale mortality in your herds. The workshop will feature a keynote presentation by Gary Flory, a nationally recognized expert in agricultural and environmental challenges as part of animal disease and natural disaster response. In addition, the workshop will cover biosecurity, secure food supply planning, and options for managing catastrophic mortality, including above-ground burial, composting, and advice for managing daily mortality during an outbreak. Then in May, KDA will host 8 workshops across the state for livestock and large animal emergency preparedness to provide helpful information for animal owners, from large cattle operations to families with 4-H show animals to horse barns. They will cover a variety of critical topics including biosecurity, mortality management, crisis communication, continuity of business, and lessons that have been learned in other disasters. There's no charge to attend any of these educational events. Responding to an animal disease or natural disaster emergency will require cooperation among public entities, private agribusiness, and individuals across the agriculture world in order to enable us all to get back to business as quickly as possible. We encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities to learn more about how to protect the Kansas livestock industry as well as your own business. Find out dates, locations, and other information about any of these upcoming events, including how to register, at agriculture.ks.gov/emergency management.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leading in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online, kswheat.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future of Kansas corn. Online, kscorn.com.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
All over the country, more and more communities are making the change to biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil. And the decision continues, improving the health and welfare for millions of Americans while adding billions to our national economy.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net.
Matador Cattle Company was presented the National Beef Quality Assurance Cow-Calf Award February 1st during the Cattle Industry Convention in New Orleans. Matador is comprised of 3 ranches purchased by Fred Koch from 1941 to 1952, including the Spring Creek Ranch located in southeast Kansas, Beaverhead Ranch in southwest Montana, and the historic Matador Ranch in West Texas. Matador Cattle Company focuses on raising safe, healthy, and wholesome beef that meets consumer expectations. To achieve this, they require all full-time employees to be Beef Quality Assurance certified and part-time staff to be BQA trained in their area of work. Matador uses best management practices developed through the BQA program, including low-stress cattle handling, third-party animal well-being assessments, and a valid veterinarian client-patient relationship that dovetails with beef quality assurance protocol. 5 national BQA awards are given each year. Other winners this year were Scattered Acres of Bedford, Pennsylvania in the dairy division, Buffalo Feeders of Buffalo, Oklahoma in the feed yard category, Equity Cooperative Livestock Sales of Wisconsin in the marketer division, and Temple Grandin in the educator category. The awards recognize those operations and individuals that best demonstrate animal care and handling principles as part of day-to-day activities. National BQA awards are funded in part by the Beef Checkoff, with additional financial support from Cargill Meat Solutions and Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica.
Good morning. I'm Derek Hermish with Paragon Ag. There's been a lot of talk in the last 3 months and very little action, it seems, in making headway on reaching a true deal between China and the United States over the gap of imported goods and intellectual property theft. It seems we get ready to make nice and then kick the can down the road. March 1st is the latest deadline where if agreement has not been reached, the U.S. will be ratcheting up tariff rates yet again on Chinese imports. Reading between the lines of the discussions and arrangements in the last 3 months has left some to speculate that China and the U.S. are indeed closer to an agreement that could narrow the trade gap between the two countries. The intellectual property and technology issues, however, still seem to be a bridge too far. The U.S. recently indicted Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications equipment and consumer electronics manufacturer, with accusations of stealing a robot arm from T-Mobile and selling U.S. technology to Iran in violation of U.S. sanctions. That kind of action does not bode well for finding a deal in the short term that both parties are going to be agreeable to. It's plausible that the indictments against China are part of a hardball tactic to keep the pressure on China in the short term in order to get them to come to an agreement on narrowing the trade gap, after which the intellectual property issues can be handled through other channels and not under the constant spotlight of the "let's make a deal" game show we've all been viewing for the past several months. That is the best case scenario where a deal gets done, but the U.S. farmer should be asking themselves the question, what if we don't get a deal? I'm Derek Hermish. Have a good day.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device, news and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
All over the country, more and more communities are making the change to biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil. And the decision continues, improving the health and welfare for millions of Americans while adding billions to our national economy.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Well, that's our show. Be social with us online, KansasAgReport.net, or on Facebook and Twitter. The show is also in podcast form at CastBox.fm. Search Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.